Welcome to Think Fast, where we are recording this with scintillating night lights because Suchita has been very busy and this is way past my bedtime, not past my bedtime, close to my bedtime. And so, how has this week been for you? Have you had an interesting week?
Oh my God, I've had a crazy, crazy, crazy week. But I saw you were hanging out with a lot of children over the weekend. How was that?
Very good. Daughter turned 5, and we had a young scientist birthday party. The good part, though, this time we planned ahead, and there was one side for parents and one side for kids. The kids had sugar, parents had alcohol. Perfect birthday party ever. That's how you do birthday parties for kids.
Oh my God, were there any pedos at your party?
No, no, only parents of the children who came there. So thankfully, no pedos at the party. But it was fun. I was actually quite excited to see this one guy called a Bubble Man who was performing bubble tricks, and I'm like, I want that guy when I'm having more alcohol.
He was
But
definitely a pedo.
no,
Just
Bubble Man
letting
was
you
the
know.
shiz. I'm like, I want him to do Bubble Man stuff with
Dude, anyone
cocktails.
who has a job as a bubble man
He's
is
a
a
magician
pedo.
and a
That's
bubble
it.
man. He's a magic bubble
Two
man.
in one.
That is
Wow.
the gap in the market. There is a gap in the market for bubble man. I'm telling him there's a huge market gap.
Amazing. Sounds like a prosperous career being a pedo bubble man who is also a magician. Just kidding, just
Speaking
kidding.
of
I hope
prosperous, speaking
none
of
of us are.
prosperous,
None
Meta
of
doesn't seem
us
to be
are.
doing being prosperous as well. In this week's news, as we were running through things, we realized that
What
Meta
a
has said,
segue. What Taj, Varun. आज तो लाजवाब, inshallah.
yes, on that note,
Mumtaz Mahal. My God, you have
from bubble
crushed
and
it with
beta
your
to Meta,
segue.
from bubble and
Yes.
beta to Meta.
Oh my God. Okay. So tell us this meta news.
Yeah, so basically, nothing. I don't think this is like new news because I think all the big tech firms are all kind of like really signaling recession is around the corner, and so they kind of flag that off. They're obviously seeing lower numbers. They're seeing, in general, there is a little bit of stress in the market when the big five are always talking about okay, got to be controlled in
Sorry.
hiring. They're the big five, right? Big four, big five, whatever that is. I'm not talking about the accounting firm big five. There are many big fives. Let me count the big five.
Okay.
Apple, Google, Facebook, Netflix, and Amazon. That's five.
Yes, but what is the point that you were making? I got distracted because you kept talking and I forgot what you were talking about, and then I started laughing. But you were talking about how Meta is apparently not hiring anymore, correct?
Yes, they're not hiring anymore because they think recession concerns are right up there.
Which is fair, dude. And if you think
Yeah.
about it, like not just them, we discussed Google putting hiring on freeze, Microsoft apparently cutting, I think, 1% of their workforce.
Yeah.
Shopify, I don't know if you saw this, man, like the
Yeah.
D2C darling,
Yeah.
everyone was obsessed with Shopify and, democratizing commerce. They laid off 1,000 employees a day before their quarterly results. So
Yeah.
things seem to be pretty shite across the
Yeah.
board and all over the place.
Yeah, and if you just compare this to last year, right, and I think we've spoken about this a lot on the show, is that you're kind of seeing almost a very different side of this whole thing. Last year, everything was kind of all guns blazing, everybody was doing really well,
Hmm.
but you are going through that cycle. Although uh, there are many reports which say that this isn't necessarily like all the recessions of the past because a lot of the metrics are still pretty positive. So it's a very weird scenario where it's not playing as per the past. All
Yeah.
metrics don't point at a regular kind of recession, but it's almost one of those like slow down downturns that is happening. I guess you'll have to just wait and watch and see. But as we
So, a
always say
quick
on the
question
show,
for you over
fundamentals
here.
will play.
Yes, Queen, fundamentals will always win. But a quick question for you here. What's the professional advice you would give to folks who are, working at large companies or working at startups? Because I know we guys spoke about international
Yeah,
examples, but Indian startups aren't far behind, right? Every single large company that, raised a shit ton of money last year, they're all slowly, silently cutting off hundreds and hundreds of people. Apparently, there's been close to 8,500 job cuts within
yeah.
startups in India in the past, 5 to 6 odd months. So, what's the advice that you'd give to someone who's working somewhere right now?
I'd say that in many cases there are opportunities for jobs. It's not like jobs are not available, but I feel what happened last year is a lot of the salaries got really bloated up. Some of the offers were outlandish. you might have to kind of tone down your expectations in terms of what you're looking for right now in the market. But as long as you keep an eye out for a company that seems stable, I know that's a little tricky right now in the way the market is. I mean, literally, if Meta, Microsoft, all these guys are talking about cutbacks, then nobody's kind of not in that bandwagon. But I'd say they just kind of keep a head down and kind of just continue with the work. But I'd
Yeah.
say look at opportunities which seem a little more stable and not as volatile. Look at the market you're in. Not all industries are
Yeah.
running through this. Like many industries are actually hiring like crazy. And the good part is, if you speak to a lot of founders today, um, they're actually hiring a lot of tech talent, because finally a lot of technology talent is affordable for a large section of startups who couldn't even afford them last year.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. In other news, Paytm's focus continues to be on BNP PLN. They are apparently on track to achieve operating profitability by September 23, as per their co-founder and CEO Vijay Shekhar Sharma. Sorry, founder and CEO Vijay Shekhar Sharma. What do you make of these ever-changing profitability targets of Paytm? And did you end up getting any stock in them, by the way?
No, I didn't. I didn't end up getting. But I have a point of view on Paytm. I honestly feel that in the last couple of years, the product has really improved. I feel
Hmm.
in between they went too wide and they tried to do too many things, and the product really suffered. Genuinely seeing Paytm, the core product, really come back in prominence. So, as much as we all love VSS and everything that he puts out there into the world, I
Hmm.
sometimes miss his Twitter Space sessions, which used to be very entertaining early pandemic to jump
Yeah.
into. But I feel at some point when you keep creating newer metrics, you got to be a little careful about saying, okay, how much of this is a new metric for just like showing you're going to achieve something, versus
Hmm.
is it a new metric for how your business is evolving? Oftentimes it
Yeah.
becomes the first one where you're just kind of
Mhm.
figuring a way to market speak, sugarcoat it. But we all hope, I
But
guess, that it should be the second one.
Yeah, but he's got to be careful because now it's not just, saying random statements, but it's also making sure to deliver on them because
Yeah.
his share price is literally directly correlated to what he says. But these guys have been like hit like crazy. Zomato stock pummeled in the last couple of days down to what, 44, 41? I can't remember what new low it reached.
I was actually talking to someone who I know, who I work with for my investments in the market, etc.
Hmm.
And I think he said something which I think is very interesting, is that as much as you might have a certain level of spiel when you're a VC funded company, when you
Hmm.
decide to become a publicly listed company, all that spiel goes out the window, because guys who are buying stuff in the market look at basic, like, are you making profits? Do you have a path to
Yeah.
profitability? How
Yeah.
is your like metrics, like how stable are you? That's what
Hmm.
people invest in. So as much as you might have a lot of the other stuff, and I feel this also kind of is something which Zomato is going through as well. If you look at Zomato right now, just like perception wise, that's the problem, is that all that stuff works great when you're private. Once you go
Yeah.
public, people look at brass tack numbers. That's what they look at. They don't look at the spiel as much.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know who? I was talking to Dhruv about this in the morning, but do you know who is a little worrying right now? I mean, thank God they don't have plans to IPO anytime soon, but Swiggy, because
Yeah.
Zomato's market cap has reached literally what their last private valuation was at
Mm.
5.5 billion or some such thing. Swiggy today is valued at 10 billion. So, which is double that of
Yeah.
Zomato, and I think their losses are worse than Zomato's. I don't think their capital efficiencies have kicked in all that much, and obviously they spent a ton of money buying Dine Out. But maybe a conversation for another day. What is Swiggy going to do when Zomato's getting kicked left, right, and center? But like all good things, they'll bounce back. Speaking of bouncing back, Nas Academy has raised $12 million. What do you make of this news?
This is super interesting, right? Because they raised. I mean, it's not too long ago when they raised their last round, and they're
Hmm.
and looking at edtech, and just people haven't been investing as much into edtech, and it's been in that whole space. This shows, and if you actually go to the Nas Academy site, it's a very interesting observation. If you go to their website, and I just went onto that before we went to this recording, what used to be highlighted was the wide range of courses they had. But if you
Hmm.
go right now, the first thing you see saying spend your life doing something fun. No, it's basically
Hmm.
learning. It's their flagship creator accelerator program. So people who want to learn to be creators, that's front and center. And if you go inside, there are more classes on business and like crypto and all that stuff. All that somewhere hidden inside the classes section. But front and center, how can you be a creator? And that's actually the biggest gap in the creator economy, is that people who are trained to kind of really be the editors, camera people, data analysts, those are the jobs in the creator economy, and which is very, very like, I mean, you have to really look far and wide to find people, and most times you find someone super like fresh and and in, I would say, unstructured in thought.
Yeah.
But this might be, I mean, I guess this could be one of the reasons why they got the funding, and I don't know about their numbers or how they're done otherwise. I have had a chat with both Nas, which you set up, I remember, a while back.
I
Nasir,
know.
Nasir,
Yeah. Nasir,
and I
Nasir, yeah.
and a while back, even
You
his
say
chief business officer
Yusuf.
was on advertising is dead. And I
Hmm.
spoke to him as well. And so they seem to be going after this in a slightly different manner with a community focus, and just like focus on the creator side. But it'll be
Hmm.
interesting to see how this kind of scales up. Interesting
Yes.
note, Ritesh Agarwal is one of their investors,
The
and
Oyo
also has a
guy.
course on the platform.
Yeah, don't
The
you remember
Oyo.
we had seen this last year when you were making notes for
Exactly.
your interview with Nas.
Yeah.
But makes sense. I mean, Lightspeed is a anchor investor in Nas Academy, and usually funds founders end up piling on, especially in these early rounds. So a
Yeah.
quick run through of the rest of the topics that we have here. Spotify has seen a rise in subscriptions and earnings. Congratulations. Netflix could learn a thing or two.
Yeah.
An unending Series B, Jar's curious way to raise capital in a funding winter. I don't know if we discussed this article briefly, but Jar, which is which was touted as like that hot new fintech app, they've been listing themselves on Angel List and Let's Venture to raise a $50 million Series B, which is a little absurd because these platforms are usually meant for smaller round sizes, but never know, if it works for them, it works for them.
Mm.
South Korea has virtual influencers. Kyra has a South Korean counterpart. So interesting stuff there. And the last piece of interesting news that I found is this Kotak Hurun list of wealthiest Indian women.
Are you on
And
it?
guess
Are
who's
you on it yet?
I am so far from being on it. I am like very accurately 10 zeros away from being on this list. But the people who are on this list are Roshni Nadar Malhotra, who of course is a chairman chief something majig of
She's the
HCL
chief for
Technologies.
HCL Technologies.
Yeah, and then of course you've got the Nykaa founder Falguni Nair, who is apparently India's richest self-made woman and the world's 10th richest self-made woman with net worth
Well
of,
done.
dude, listen to this, 57,520 crores. Okay, Varun, trick question. How many
Yes.
zeros are there in
I'm not even trying.
57,520 crores? You can
How
do
many
it.
zeros
You
are
can
in
do it.
57,520 is what the question should be. One zero.
Oh my God. Yeah, so I think that covers the pieces of news that caught my eye, man. What about
Yeah.
you?
So yes, we're going to jump through a bunch of pieces this week. We're going to talk through this very interesting piece on how people can navigate marketplaces, considering so much of what is online commerce happens on marketplaces. As much as you talk about D2C, a large part of the commerce bandwagon is off marketplaces, right? So there's an interesting piece we want to run through on that front. We're talking about what seems to be our new favorite after MyGlam, which is Ola. What's happening with Ola? We're going to dig into that a little bit, as well as my favorite platform. All the people seem to be dissing on it, Instagram, and what happened with them this week with the backlash they got for the changes they're making. And then your favorite topic, talking about Indian coffee brands. Your second favorite topic after Indian tequila brands, Indian coffee brands.
Yes,
We
Queen.
will discuss that, and then we will end with recommendations. So that is what we're talking about this week. But before we do that, we'll take a break. Right back. Think fast. I don't know why I'm talking like that, but it's by the way, I have a great recommendation. I realized it. I thought about recommendation before we go for first break. This is a moment, but while I revel in my own moment, we will be back after this break.
Hello, hello, hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the Wired Talks, Siddharth talks to former Secretary General PDT Achari, who sheds light on words being banned from usage in Parliament. On Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Ayushi, Akash, and Antriksh discuss the controversy surrounding Smriti Irani's family restaurant in Goa. On The Habit Coach, Ashton speaks about how a nursery rhyme can be surprisingly inspirational for adults. On Think Fast, Varun and Suchita throw light on the rise in investments in plant-based meat. And on the Life Manifesto, Zarina helps you identify energy vampires and gives you tips on how to deal with them. Once again, everybody, remember we have amazing merchandise available. You can go to ivmpodcast.com/store or go to our website and you'll be able to see the link. Do check this out. Do buy some stuff. It really does help us out. Do remember, follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. Remember, if you do tell a friend about a show and they listen to the show, you'll have somebody to talk to the show about. We'd really appreciate it also if you could give us a rating on whatever platform you're listening to us on. And finally, do remember we're also available on YouTube. A number of our shows are available as full video shows, but every show is available on YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, both Lifestyle, Small Case, Capgemini, and Intel V Pro. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back to Think Fast, where while we were in break, we were talking about how hot Ryan Gosling is. And Suchita yawned while we were discussing that topic. So this is unfortunate
Do you know who is
for
not
Ryan
hot?
and for Gosling.
Do you know who is not hot? You
Who?
from 10 years ago. When we
Yeah.
all saw that picture. Oh my God, bro. If it makes you feel any better, neither was I. Neither was I. But
We
yeah,
all
it
aged well.
happens
We
to
all aged well.
just like fine
Considering,
wine.
yes, considering I'm almost like 2 weeks from 40 now. 2 weeks from 40.
Damn.
But before I go down that rabbit hole again, let's talk about marketplaces. Your favorite piece of information. I don't know. I just said that for I don't know what
Yay.
reason.
No, it actually is. I'm obsessed with marketplaces and I like study and analyze them all the time.
So I'm
But
handing this
basically,
to you
guys,
to take over because for me, marketplaces is I went by a market today. It was very crowded. I did not buy anything. That is the marketplace I know.
thank God you have me as a co-host. In any case,
Yes.
so guys, there's this really kick-ass article in one of our favorite publications called The Hard Copy by Meeta Malhotra, who's also been a guest on the show. And basically, it's a two-part series on how do you navigate marketplaces, because to the point that Varun made, everyone sort of thinks of marketplaces as if I list on Amazon, boom, job is done. I'm suddenly going to get a flurry of orders, but you need to work these marketplaces and make them work for you, right? So Arindam Paul, who's one of the founding members and head of marketing and strategy of Atomberg, which apparently is set to hit a $20 million run rate for this financial year. And Atomberg, for those of you who don't know, is this a really cool fan brand. Like, I found it a little random when I had heard of Atomberg first, because you're just like, what is a USP of this? It's a fan with a remote. But you realize how and this ties back with the last conversation that we had, right, where there is an opportunity to actually premiumize basics through product innovation, R&D, and that's what Atomberg's done. And basically, this guy Arindam Paul shares a couple of tips and tricks on how to think about building up your marketplace. So we'd encourage you to go read this article, but a couple of takeaways for me, and I'll kick off this segment. One critical thing is marketing and customer acquisition on marketplaces is equal part art as it is science. The reason why I say science is because, I mean, whether anyone likes it or not, it comes down to one metric, right? What is your conversion on your product display page or on your product landing page? So that's the single most important metric to look at. And obviously, there are many things that can help you move that metric, a bunch of which Arindam talks about in this particular article, right? So one could be running deals and discounts, other could be bundling of goods, the third could be very well written product descriptions, running offers, this, that, and the other. But the reason why I think it's also in equal parts art is because the smaller things, right, the smaller aspects which usually go unnoticed, whether it's photography, whether it's brand tonality, language used, helping a consumer really understand what the job to be done of that product is in your day to day, those are really the tougher problems to solve for. And I think it's a combination of these two things, right? Really thinking about conversion and doing all your price as a leverage up and down, round and round, to deliver on outcomes, but also making the experience feel more human to consumers. I think it's in the marriage of those that the magic really lies. What about you, man? What was your TLDR from this post?
So I actually went towards the photography space. Right, that's one of the things which I remember that we've worked on for a while. And if you look at early commerce pieces, you would always look at it slightly more crunched on those base level imagery that you'd put up on commerce. But in many ways, really focusing on the imagery, focusing on the quality of not just what you put up, not just how your product is, but are you really showing the quality of your product in the imagery you put out there, in every aspect of like even the A plus content, etc. What you have when you kind of scroll down. I
Yeah.
feel that point is super important, because we don't necessarily focus on that as much, and oftentimes that's what puts people off. When you look at something that seems like it's only from stock, or it's only like from like generic imagery, sorry,
Hmm.
they don't really go towards that. But what I found really good about the article was that he's broken this down really well. That he's like we just said, he's really focused on the science and the art in that sense. But one of the couple of I had a couple of questions here, and while he's focused a lot about the Amazon and the marketplace side of things, the one piece which I know that came up was reviews.
Yeah.
And reviews I've always found to be a little dodgy in many of these, because sometimes you don't
Because
know
they
what's
can
a
be
legit
bought.
review and which is not. There's a lot of
Yeah.
that happening. And oftentimes you'll end up buying something with a good review and realize it's actually not that great, and stuff like that. That's the only gap. And I don't think you do anything about it. There is always going to be review fraud. But I thought it would be interesting to kind of see if there was a kind of, is there a solve being worked for that? Because as much as people look for that, is that the only metric by which you buy, or
Hmm.
is the review really that important?
So, anyone knows, right? Quantum of reviews is paramount, which is why you have a lot of, unfortunately, or for whatever, better or for worse, like review generating farms, right? There's this whole parallel business of, how do you gamify reviews on Amazon and Myntra and this,
Yeah.
that, and the other. Reviews is one part of it, but I also think it depends from category to category. So, for example, I
Mm.
think reviews matter in categories which have very little competition and are higher ASP, right? So, for example, do you need to read 6,000 reviews when you're buying a, phone charger online, or
Yeah.
do you need to read 6,000 reviews when you're, buying a laptop or a phone or, a microwave or whatever else? So, I think it depends significantly from category to category. So, for example, we've seen that sometimes even if a product isn't well reviewed, but if the images depict the truth, quote unquote, of the product, that itself goes a long way, right? And just to give you very simple examples, look at companies like Net-a-Porter.
Mm.
um, and what they've been able to do with their PDPs. If you open a Net-a-Porter PDP, Net-a-Porter, or however, like people who can actually afford to shop on that
Poitier.
website, however they say it, but they're just so beautifully done. So for those of you who are listening to us and haven't had a chance to check out Net-a-Porter, but it's basically like one of the internet's first luxury focus platforms. Their videos, right, which show like the movement of apparel. And again, if you open Net-a-Porter, you don't see those many reviews. You don't see like reviews for Altuzara, Proenza, Schule, and the likes. But the quality of imagery is so damn good
Yeah.
that it makes you want to make the purchase. I'll give you another example. There's a brand called Acho Jaipur,
Mm.
ACHHO or some such thing, Jaipur. I know they sell on Nykaa Fashion. I don't know where else they sell. And I know they're doing extremely well. And extremely well, work with assumption is like northward of 2 CR a month, right?
Mm.
Now, for example, someone like and this is what I've like heard through the rumor mill, so I may be wrong, but I know they're doing well irrespective of what the quantum of revenue is. If you open their product display pages, they've shot with influencers.
Mm.
So they basically tied up with a bunch of influencers and got the influencers to wear these gorgeous outfits,
Which is
and
the
and
boat
again they pick
model, right? Which is how boat really scaled up because of the tapping onto culture and creators and stuff like that.
cricketers and whatever, like pop culture phenomena, and using those within PDPs to drive results. And this is what I mean by content to commerce. And not to segue, but there's another great example that I saw today, right? So Masawa season 2 came out,
Mm.
and I don't know if you saw
I've seen this
Masaba's
as well.
most recent post, but she basically said, all the fashion that you saw on Masaba
You can
season
buy
2,
it.
you can now buy it on House of. That, my friends, is actually content to commerce, not whatever our good
And
friends
one
at
of the
My
reasons why this
Glam say
happened,
it
right?
is.
If you,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know if you know this, when the last season came out and first season came out, all the clothes over there, like people kept looking for it on the Masaba site. So this time
Yeah.
they planned it. They learned from that data, saying people are looking for the same items. So
Yeah.
they planned ahead for this season, which, like, I agree with you. This is exactly how content commerce should work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So and going back to the article and the point that the article was making, right? This is what I have been saying, and this is what I mean by making content work for you, where it needs to work for you. So content to commerce doesn't mean someone's gonna read something on Instagram and then immediately purchase it. But content to commerce is how do you bring in content across all touch points of purchase and then
Mm,
make the content work for you. Like another random example, but Water Science is this
mm,
company that basically makes shower heads, and their
mm,
positioning is that India has a hard water problem, and because the water in India is hard, it leads to like hair fall and
yeah,
like residue left and this that and the other. And if you open their PDPs on Amazon, dude, what beautiful PDPs that make hard water becoming soft water seem like some Bhagwan has fallen from sky onto earth and like made this crazy conversion for you, and now you can live happily ever after. So
yeah.
it's just like it's exactly that, right? It's taking that USP of your product but communicating it in a way where you simplify it for the consumer, and you make them trust in what your brand has to offer. So I can keep going on and on talking about this. I don't know how we are on time, but
I just
big
have
fan
one
of
more
using
point on this,
content
which
here.
I've always been
Yeah.
curious about, was bundling. He mentions this in one of the
Hmm.
points. Right? I think this article is super. I mean, the reason I think we should go a little deeper also in the couple of minutes over on this story is that he's really broken it down so well, and we should definitely link it up in the show notes, where he he says experiment with bundling. Now my question here is, I know that Amazon etc. have like guidelines for this, but in your experience, have you seen bundling really work? If you, or does it only work when you bundle with your own products? Or what if you want to bundle with people in the same category? Can you almost piggyback on someone else? Have you seen stuff like that work?
So in China, there's a very popular company called PDD that does this. Then obviously now you have marketplaces with owned inventory, which technically aren't really marketplaces. But for example, if you look at like a Blinkit, Zepto, and the likes, right? They have their own dark stores and they make deliveries from there. So technically, bundling can happen on a cart, even if it's from multiple different brands versus just one brand. I think bundling works fantastically well if you are buying products that usually are bought in bundles, like a bundle of chaddis, right? Or like a bundle of socks, or like a bundle of tissue paper, toilet paper, soap, blah blah bullshit, bullshit. So things that are genuinely bought in volumes.
Mm.
Bundling generally works really well over there, and in China, PDD Pinduoduo has made a business out of bundling, right? They've literally made a business out of everything from like group buying to gamifying the experience of buying basics at bulk. Another great example in the US, obviously not e-com, but Costco, right, is the mother of all examples of how bundling works very well at scale. And for those of you who are uninitiated, you must read up on Costco, because they're like your OG essentials subscription a platform product, not platform because it's an offline store, but they really crack subscription plus retail plus bundling for essentials. So long story short, I think bundling generally works fantastically well if you are in categories that require bulk purchases to be made, where a consumer is likely to appreciate the pricing arbitrage that they get if they buy in bulk versus in isolation. And what it also obviously does for players is it helps you build up your average order value, which helps you then justify the 50 to 100 rupees that you're going to spend on delivery cost in any case. So yeah, bundling works magic, but depends on the category.
So I think there's so much more to discuss on this, but I think we'll move on to the next story. But we really urge everyone to kind of read this article. It's very nicely done. But moving on to what's happening with Ola. Um, I don't know where to start on this story because you've spoken about Ola in the past, and I feel like in many ways, see, if I look at it, if everyone's trying to disrupt the EV space, really trying to push that ahead. You're seeing the conversations around EVs, especially like the fact that you have buildings talking about how do you build in chargers over there, to everybody kind of figuring out that they do want to get an EV in the building. You're seeing that really, I think, skyrocket in the last 6-8 months. That's actually been the big
Hmm.
surge there, because of companies like Ola who really push the narrative out there. Right? We've got to give them that in that sense. But if you look at it in the broader sense, what's really happening with Ola is that, I mean, there seems to be a lot of wrong going on inside. Right, they're close to firing. They're firing close to 1,000 employees. There's a lot of issues with the core business on the cab front. You're hearing enough
Hmm.
about. I think across the board, all cab companies are getting a lot of a lot of grief. Both Uber and Ola in that sense. There's also this very weird piece that happened where there was a piece of news that came out said that Ola was going to sell to Uber, and then Bhavish Agarwal kind of came out and said this
Shot
is
it
false.
down.
Shot it down. The founder has shot it down. Happened, and obviously they've shut down also a bunch of their quick commerce business and all that stuff there. So there's a lot happening there, isn't it? In this company in the last year, there's way too much happening.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think, there's a part of you which is just like, this guy's doing the right thing because he's, it almost seems like he bought himself enough time, uh, you know, to the point where EVs had enough momentum around them for him to like literally pivot his business into just being an EV business. But I mean, the cost at which it's come, it's kind of
Mm,
bonkers, isn't it?
yeah,
Like, can you imagine the amount of money he spent on buying Food Panda, building Food Panda, shutting Food Panda down, building out Ola Dash, shutting Ola Dash down, building out Ola Foods? Like, it's just kind of bonkers how much money gets like thrown at problems, and then
yeah.
those businesses shutter down, and somehow he's still magically able to raise money, navigate his business from one to totally the other. I don't know, but
I
man
actually
has
have a
guts,
broader
man has
question here,
guts,
right? I
which
have a
is
broader question here, right? If you looked at, so you look at Uber, Ola, the core early business was cabs, right? And they
hmm,
all moved towards, your quick commerce or like delivery and stuff like that. Is the core model itself flawed? I know there's enough perspective on that, but at some point you built it for a certain business. You have gotten that scale of amount of money in the bank to kind of still be able to experiment, do acquisitions, like you said, shut them down, do all that stuff. But at some point, I feel this is a company that's really trying to find, okay, now we are in this space. This doesn't seem to be working. What do we move towards? And I guess the EV space is that for them. But I think the problem there also is because of the failures and the and all that news coming out as well. That's gone off to a rocky start, but kind of feels like they know that their core business is not a long term thing for them. And so they kind of jumped on. It's almost like jumping from one moving car into the other while you're kind of
yeah.
building the steering wheel. Amazing
But
analogy. I give myself 100 points.
yes, you must have seen Speed when you were all of 12 years of age. But in any case, no, I think it comes down to one very simple thing, right? Which is, after a point, you need to justify your valuation. So, as
Mm,
per their own press release dated January 24th, 2022, they raised 200 million at a valuation of 5 billion. Now, you need to justify that valuation, and after a point, I'm not saying this guy is inventing new things to throw, at the general sort of scope of work of Ola, because technically speaking, everything that he's done has been looked at through one common lowest common denominator, which is that of mobility, right? So if
mm,
Ola's job to be done is getting things from point A to point B, which even Dara Khosrowshahi says, right, where Uber
yes.
is in the business of mobility, and Uber solves for mobility through Uber Eats, through tying up with the New York, subway, metro, whatever their version of the metro is called. But long story short, I don't disagree with his underlying, lowest common denominator, what Ola stands for. But it's kind of like, if you couldn't find revenue market fit in the first thing,
Mm,
what makes you think more iterations of the same thing, you'd find revenue market fit in? You know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah.
Like, if the and just to give you another example, there's a piece of news that came out today saying Bounce apparently has pivoted again. So they went from
Mm,
ride sharing, two-wheeler ride sharing to something else, and they've gone to the business of batteries, and now they're getting to the business of electric vehicles. Even Rapido has gone through its own sort of thingamajig and turnaround. But long story short, it seems like all these guys started with this American hype story of Uber, what was that other one, Lyft, and then
Yeah.
remember there were like a bunch of bike startups that came out in the middle as well,
Mm. Yeah.
but none of them have been able to justify their underlying valuation.
Yeah, and I think it's a space to look at because you do have a lot of people getting into this. In India, it always seemed like the two-wheelers would be where the EV space would really grow a lot more. But I feel what's interesting is if you see the number of Tata Nexons on the road, if you're seeing the number of, it seems to be that the cars are picking up as well. And at
Hmm.
some point, even if you look at this from a core, like I feel the car space will be taken over by, on one end, Tata, and even Mahindra is working on a bunch of stuff, and MG seems to be growing in India in the EV
Hmm.
space. But I can't pick one two-wheeler brand that's been able to crack it. And whoever will be able to crack that model, that is, and I know Aether is supposed to be a good one. I haven't tried it, so I don't have comments on that. But I
Hmm.
feel India being the kind of country it is, if you crack the two-wheeler, I feel that's really where you can really take on the market. Which is, I feel, maybe the failures for a lot of these guys isn't really it's almost like it's that speed bump you need to kind of go through to get to it.
Yeah.
So I'm super interested in seeing how this space evolves. But the problem is that if it's a two-wheeler and if it starts failing, there's obviously a lot of repercussions for people who are riding them, which something which is kind of
And they've
scary.
gotten
So
into trouble for that
yeah,
significantly with things catching fire and this, that, and the other. But
yeah,
speaking of catching fire, bro, Instagram caught fire. It was Instagram
yes.
versus the internet on the weekend.
But
What happened here?
but we will talk about this
Yeah.
after the break because
Oh,
we have finished
break.
two stories. We're going to another. And speaking of Instagram, guess who had just hit 100,000 followers on Instagram while we're recording
Guess
this?
who's running a lot of sponsored ads?
No, none at all. None at all. None at all.
Must be all the workout pics.
Yes, all the workout pics and the throwback photographs without beards. Seems to
Oh
be
my
working.
God.
Okay, guys, we're going to do that. We'll be right back with Think Fast. Welcome back to Think Fast, where we're talking about Instagram versus the internet, or rather, was it the Kardashians versus Instagram? Masala time for Viral Bayani, as we call it
Oh my
on this side of
God.
the.
Varun, you're like the Viral Vianney of all things
Arey,
startup
it's
internet.
one of my things, bucket list. I want to be in one of those videos. I want to also be in Wumpla or like Viral Biani and all that stuff. I thought I will be
You're
on it
getting there.
recently because I was at one of
You're
those kind
getting
of
there.
parties, but I was chopped out
You've
of the
hit
video.
100,000 followers. Oh my God, you chopped out the video.
I was chopped out of the video,
Oh,
but
ho, chopsy.
it is sad, sad time in my
Okay,
life.
you are
But
digressing. What is the story about?
so Instagram's been making this slow but very obvious change to become more like TikTok, right? And their whole thesis has been on the fact that the internet has moved from following people you know to discovering content you might want. So it's more algorithm based rather than follower based in that sense. They pushed out a bunch of new features, one of which was this whole full frame video slash image thing, which pretty much made it look exactly like TikTok. They've anyway
Yeah.
been giving most prominence for discoverability to reels now. Everything from images to carousels to everything is pretty much like dying its death in organic reach as things are kind of going ahead. So as this got rolled out, and Adam Mosseri, the Instagram CEO, as always, does those really like nice, sweet videos to announce things. Lot of backlash and this whole petition piece, make Instagram again. One image kept doing the rounds, and then the power of the first family of the internet. Kim K and Kylie Jenner also shared it, and suddenly all shit broke out everywhere. He put out another video. I'm like, imagine, I mean, you got to give this a thought.
Family credit
The
where
fact
it's
that they
due.
shared that image made the
Yes,
CEO of Instagram release another video
is
and roll
wild.
some of those back. That is
Soft
called power.
power. Soft
Ye hota hai
power.
power.
Yes,
And that's why soft power can go for a 17-minute flight on her own private jet. But that's a whole different story altogether.
that
You know
is
about
true.
that. You've heard about
Yeah,
that
yeah, of
amazing
course,
story
of
of.
course. I keep up with all the Kardashians. No, but what do you make of this, man? And
I know
obviously
you and I have
Instagram
different
wanting
opinions
to.
on this, but so I want you to tell me what you think about Instagram, A, how it's evolving, and
Hmm.
secondly, this whole rollback that they've kind of done, which isn't really a rollback, it's more a slowdown.
So, I mean, we've spoken about Instagram at multiple different points in time on Think Fast, and I think my one consistent opinion on them has been that they need to figure out how they are making money, because the problem right now is that they are using Facebook's playbook to monetize, which is
Mm.
advertising revenue.
Yeah,
But if they genuinely gave a shit about beating TikTok long term, they would do what YouTube has been able to do, who we discussed in our last episode, or what even Snapchat has been able to do, or even what LinkedIn's doing, and
yeah,
really invest in building out a creator first platform with proprietary creators. And Instagram just doesn't seem to be taking that call. It's like they've tried so many different things, right? Like they launch subscription, they launch creator shop, they launch, this, that, and the other. But somewhere it's almost like there's a big tussle internally at Meta, which is this tussle in between advertising revenue and then trying to get into the general game of commerce, and shop led revenue, because that's how all these guys want to morph themselves, right? They want to
yeah.
morph themselves into a sum of all parts, as far as business models is concerned. So I think in like the TLDR of this is, unfortunately, as long as they are tied to Meta, the drug of advertising revenue will keep luring them back. And as long as that
Mm.
keeps happening, they will continue to be confused AF, which is what they frankly are as a platform right now. And I don't think the whole movement online was about screw you, Instagram, go die in a ditch. I think it was a little bit of like, what are you trying to do? Because you're like pulling this band-aid very slowly. And in pulling this band-aid very slowly, you're kind of like jeopardizing the love that you had from the OG Instagrammers. And you're also parallelly, not refusing to be relevant enough for, the more Gen Z, early Gen Z lot that's on Instagram. So I don't know, they seem to want best of all worlds and seem to be stuck in a little black hole instead.
I feel also in India we don't have the full context because we don't have TikTok. I think across the
Yeah.
world, one of the core things is how much TikTok has really eaten into this whole business, right? The fact that YouTube
Hmm.
launched Shorts is a sign. YouTube, obviously, the most robust, the most like systematically kind of structured platform, brought in Shorts in there. So people seem to be gravitating towards the algorithm-driven piece anyway. But I feel
Hmm.
in Instagram's case, what's interesting is that if you think back on, and there's a great so this is podcast called Land of the Giants, and they
Hmm.
do these really nice series on specific platforms. They're doing one on Meta right now. There's an entire episode on what they've done to Instagram and why they're kind of changing that. So you should do check out that episode. I think it's the last one that came out, I think last week. And really talks about why that entire shift in Instagram even happened, right? When they were acquired, the founders were people who wanted to only make minute changes, never really change the core Instagram. But at some point, for it to generate, like you said, ad revenue, it had to change dramatically, which is when they left and Adam Mosseri took over, who came in from Meta onto Instagram. But I feel when I look at it now, in that sense, the word, as much as the core Instagram audience wants it to be this way, I feel what Instagram's trying to balance out here is they don't want to lose the celebrities. All the
Hmm.
celebrities, as much as they might create some stuff on TikTok, know that people follow them on Instagram. Um,
Yeah.
so they don't want to lose that, but they want to kind of bring in this whole creator economy, people creating content, so more people are watching stuff on Instagram piece. And in that balancing act, somewhere in between, I feel the essence of what is really Instagram. I know we've said this about Twitter in the past as well. This transitionary period of what is this platform trying to be is always a problem. And like they copied Snapchat, I guess copying TikTok is a little tougher because
Yeah.
you can't build this kind of a tool set and that recommendation engine that TikTok has, which is fabulous. You can't build that as quickly. But again, I'm guessing this is where they're going. This is not a full-fledged, okay, we're not going to do that. This is more like, okay, we'll take it a little slower with this and kind of push it forward.
Hmm.
But this is where it's headed, and I feel that what they'll always try to do is appease the core larger celebrity crowd because that's one big part of their platform. But
Yeah.
eventually they're going to be a lot like, not like TikTok, but maybe just TikTok with images. Although I do feel if they start highlighting the following option, which is actually there on Instagram, where you can actually choose and
Hmm.
only see people you follow and only see chronological order, people can kind of just go do that. But it's so nicely hidden right on top of the Instagram logo that people don't even know it's there.
But it kills usage. So, for example, like a friend of mine had tweeted about how, or if you want to reduce your Twitter usage and just like stop being angry at the world, you can do the same on Twitter, right? Like change the
Yeah.
setup to a chronological order versus, based on popularity. I tried that for like 3 weeks. I totally stopped using Twitter. And
Mm.
it's gotten to the point where like literally I'll open it maybe once a day just to see what's up, right? Just like pull stories for Think Fast, that's it.
Yeah.
So, and all these businesses have to be drugs at the end of the day at some
Yeah.
point. So, you get where the chess moves are coming from, but I don't know, man. Like, I know this sounds really dumb to say, but I am very, very, very long on Pinterest.
Mm.
I think, if you
That's
can
not dumb at
keep
all.
your if you keep your if you can somehow ensure that your valuation isn't too like for example, Zoom was a great business till the pandemic made every dumbfuck thing that Zoom would be $100 billion business, though it should have stayed where it should have stayed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
sometimes, like these like crazy markets, especially when they're highly euphoric, end up pumping companies up to a valuation that's larger than what they can handle. And
Yeah.
maybe at some level that's what's happening with Facebook right now, because like what is going to be the next social media, right? There's
Yeah.
this app that's come out called Be Real or something, which
Be real.
is touted to be like the Instagram slash TikTok killer, because it's all about being authentic and being yourself. But I don't know, I think
Can I
maybe it's time for a new
have a
social media.
perspective on being authentic and being yourself? Is that
Don't
eventually does it
do
no it,
either.
I don't think it scales as a platform, because you will have to
Hmm.
platforms make money of advertising. Platforms don't make as much money of subscriptions. Netflix is an example of that, right? They haven't to go back to advertising.
Yeah.
So in many ways, for you to go there, you need that bulk of content. You need to have spots to put in those ads.
Hmm.
um, and so I don't think that part's kind of going away, which is why a lot of these platforms tend to kind of like look at Snap. Snap also started off with this same thought process, eventually
Yeah.
had to kind of build in almost like a feed in there, right? So I feel it'll always kind of come in. I feel the problem with Instagram and Meta, unlike everybody else, is actually no. I think Instagram and Facebook as well as Twitter is people don't know what they are going to become. So you're unsure
Hmm.
of what am I going to get tomorrow when I open an Instagram or a Twitter. And I feel
Hmm.
that's where the core problem lies. Just tell people what you're going to get and let them decide. Don't like dilly dally around it, is I feel the bigger problem.
But where's the fun in that? A little bit of negging
That's
goes a
true.
long way.
I
Yes.
though want
And
to go
now,
back to
last
like
story.
I want to go back to
Last
Kabutar
story.
and Kabutar
Kabutar and
and
pen.
yes, that's the best. That was the best
Oh
time. In my
my
youth, we used to
God.
do kabutars when I was young. I'm
Dude, you
not
were
that
like
old.
Amrish Puri in DDLJ. Oh.
No, I was
Oh.
Salman Khan in Maine Pyar Kiya.
Oh my, you definitely did not look like Salman Khan in Maine Pyar Kiya now that we've seen your photos from 10 years ago.
That
But
is true.
last story,
Coffee
something we all
brands.
need now.
Yes, I'm not drinking that right now. I will not be able to sleep. But Indian coffee brands. There's been a lot of action in the coffee space in recent times, right? You professed your love for Blue Tokai in the past. You've spoken about Rage Coffee as well. But in general, there seems to be a very interesting movement happening with coffee in India. Not just through D2C, but I think in beyond that as well.
Yeah.
So, do you want to kick this one off?
Of course, I thought you never ask. Okay, so jumping into this story, I think, and the reason why I was excited to talk about this is because, when a space gets crowded, then the most obvious thing that people like saying is, ki, okay, this space is dead and there are too many players, and how are you going to differentiate from the other? And the same narrative played out in, for example, if you remember beer, right? A very large industry, Bira launched, and then there were six other folks who launched. And obviously, Alcobev is a very complicated category because
Yeah.
you're limited by channels of distribution, pricing, this whole psycho mafia around the category, this, that, and the other. But I think coffee is one where it's almost like every new entrant who's come into the space, irrespective of what scale they may or may not have hit, has done it in very unique ways. Now, obviously, one big question that's yet left to be answered is how big can this category be? Because um, instant coffee, rules the roost, but India still very much is a chai drinking chai drinking country. If you compare, Tata tea to like a
Yeah.
Nescafe, for example. But I think the thing that's interesting about, Rage versus Sleepy Owl versus Blue Tokai is just how they have done two things, right? One looked at their channels of distribution, and the second one is also looked at their form. So if I had to
Yeah.
sort of break it down, right, if you look at something like a Blue Tokai, and if you examine all of these in this 2 by 2 type grid, right, where there's form and there's distribution. Blue Tokai said what? Blue Tokai said that we're in the business of QSR almost, right?
Yeah.
And their sort of competition became Starbucks. We're going to go and build the Starbucks equivalent of India. Obviously, Third Wave is also now getting into their territory. But long story short, Blue Tokai said, okay, our form will be ready to drink coffee.
Yeah.
Made fresh in front of consumers, and our distribution will be offline and retail, and they've stuck to their guns on that. If you look at Sleepy Owl, their distribution has largely been omni-channel, where they've looked at both online and offline.
Yeah.
They've done a healthy mix of like D2C plus marketplace
Yeah.
plus retail. And if you look at their form, Sleepy Owl actually started as cold brew.
Yeah.
Do you
Cold brew,
remember
which
like their
became.
old school dabbas?
I remember I've actually had one of the co-founders on Advertising State, and I remember talking to him, and he was telling me how they start off as cold brew, but then they realized that
Yeah,
Indians aren't going to. They weren't dipping into that. Then the hot coffee, the almost the tea
the
bag
tea bags.
equivalent of this thing
Yeah,
started off, and now they've gotten
yeah,
into everything from cold coffee in cans to so many more
exactly.
pieces. So
Yeah,
it's very interesting to see
and
how they've evolved as this like
yeah.
almost like an alternative to Nescafe, if you think about it.
Yeah, and again, just experimenting with form, right? Like I remember when cold brew came out, it was the shit, because cold brew was like less acidic, easier on your gut, like easier to make, and it was bougie enough, right, where you felt like you made an effort, but you didn't really make that much of an effort. And then enter Rage. Like Rage has just basically said, you know what, fuck this shit, I am going to compete head on with Nescafe and brew, and just give a slightly more like elevated caffeine
Yeah.
experience, package my products really well, and go like crazy on
Go
Amazon and the
vitamins, go all
likes.
the other stuff in it as well.
Yeah, go crazy on flavors, like screw the authentic coffee, bougie, this, that, and the other. But long story short, I think the thing that I love about the coffee companies in India is, despite it being such a competitive and genuinely a small category, it's
Yeah.
almost like everyone's found their own niche in the space, and it's problem solving in fairly interesting ways.
Yeah, and if you look at even the smaller ones, largely the cities have like your roasters, etc. over there. While they sticking to the tried and tested model in that sense, what I feel is interesting about all of them is they've all found, while you said form, I feel they've all found their niches, showing that
Hmm.
coffee as a category isn't a one size fits all. Not everybody has to do the cafe route or like go Starbucks in that sense, but you can actually find different gaps which you didn't even realize were there till these guys build these products out. And you never know what might be next in that sense because of and I find the Sleepy Owl and the Rage ones the more exciting ones to look at because they're not gone traditional. They've gone
Hmm.
almost like, is this something a student would kind of pick up? Like I have a Sleepy Owl pack lying in my bag when I'm traveling, because most places when you go to a hotel has coffee you don't like, but I'd use a Sleepy Owl anytime. So just stuff like that is super interesting to see that how do you target that consumer, and
Yeah.
say if you're a traveler, how can you kind of get it there and so on and so forth. But it's super exciting to just see how they've innovated and they're also trying different things. There's also flavor. They also realize the Indian consumer is not picky about. I mean, there are some people who are picky about coffee, like only filter coffee, only purists and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
I will only drink black and I will never put flavor in my coffee. But I know that large
Hmm.
number of people are open to kind of experimenting with trying stuff in the coffee as well.
Yeah, and a couple of different formats have come up over here, right? Like you've seen the purists find their niche in the form of like Koinonia coffee roasters,
Yeah,
or Savor Works, or Devan's coffee, so on and so forth. You've also seen the non-purists find their niche, right? Like you have Country Bean that also does a variety of flavors and fairly good, instant coffee. You've got Rage, and then you'll have 10 other coffee brands that have come up in that cohort. But and maybe I'll do some digging around before our next episode, but I'd love to sort of maybe jump into? Have all of these coffee companies collectively actually help grow the market, or is it that the market just become fragmented, where it's like, a bunch of different folks have different pieces and pies of an otherwise, fairly small market, but fun category, man,
Yeah.
and interesting things
The
happening here.
question I have though is this still largely tier one cities? Because like for instance, I was in Ahmedabad recently,
Hmm.
and someone for a meeting said you want to catch up in Mocha, and I'd forgotten what it meant to go to a Mocha. Right, Mocha used to be around a
Yeah,
long time ago, and you
yeah,
go
yeah.
there. The Mocha in a city like Ahmedabad is exactly what it used to be back in the day in Bombay.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
what people were drinking was largely, it was a lot of the frill around the coffee or anything else. Like you also had the foam, you had like this. I mean, the first thing someone said is, "Okay, the desserts here are really good." They didn't say the coffee here is really good. So
Yeah.
I want to see how if this has spread wider than the core cities, how does that really happen? Are you going to have to
Hmm.
evolve to kind of appease that, or is there a way to bring this same thought process to go beyond the tier one cities?
But last small thing over here, I don't think each of these companies needs to become $100 million company, right? I
I
frankly
agree with
don't
that.
even think a lot of these companies will raise a shit ton of money, apart from maybe like the Blue Tokais of the world because of their offline, format. I do think these companies could be great acquisition targets for like the Nestle's of the world, who may want to
Mm.
appeal to a younger generation that is like kind of done with Nescafe and wants to move on to the next thing. So I don't know. I mean, do any of us expect these companies to become 800 crore revenue generating companies? Probably not. But that
They
doesn't
don't even have
limit.
to try to be, is what I think the
Exactly.
valid
Yeah,
point you
yeah,
just made.
yeah, yeah. But that's on that, man.
Yeah. And though we've run through all our stories, and we have time to come back for our recommendations. But before that, we will take a break. And since I thought about my recommendations early, we're going to give you more time to think about yours. But we will back right back for this after our break on Think Fast. Welcome back to Think Fast. The show is almost over. What do you want to recommend
Yay!
today? We are
Oh
amazing
my
singers. I should be
God.
on Saregama. I once won state level third prize in Telugu film song singing competition when I was in fifth standard
There's a reason why you won third prize. And
in
I
the
am
state.
glad.
But guess how
In
many
the
people competed
state,
in that competition that day?
five,
Four
four,
people.
three. Oh my God. See, that's
People
the
didn't
part of
turn
the
up.
story that you should have left out, Mr. Dugirala. That's
It's
the part of the
okay.
story you should have
I'm
left out.
honest and authentic. You see, that is my core.
Oh
Um,
my God, just like all the influencers on Instagram. But I have a recommendation. I thought of one
yeah.
already because we spoke about coffee. There is this excellent instant coffee brand which obviously sells on LBB. It's called
Mm,
VS Money. You
mm.
guys
Oh, I love
have
VS
to
Money.
try.
I've tried VS
Oh
Money.
my God, I'm obsessed. Like I am
I
genuinely
love the
very
story
like
behind the
picky
brand.
about.
Have you?
Obviously, I've heard of the story and blah blah bullshit. I mean, the story and all is cute, but you know what I mean. Like I'm there for the coffee, man.
Yeah,
Just kick ass
yeah.
instant coffee. I am so impressed with that brand. Yeah. So VS Money is excellent if you like instant coffee, and you can shop them on LBB.
Yeah, I
That's
also
my
like the
plug
fact that
for
when you
here.
order from them, I think if you order a pack, you also get the filter coffee, the
Filter
glass,
coffee.
and
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and this thing. So it's actually quite
It's very
cute how
cute.
they do that. No, I
Yeah.
really like the brand. It's lovely. I bought them very early on when they just started off their own. Like I think it was linked to their Instagram account, and I bought it from there. And
Hmm.
and the founders were actually manning the Instagram account at that point in time. So I actually even had a chat with them saying, guys, this is lovely. I love the story. I love how the cost of the coffee is tasted. So yeah, it's good to see that they have VS Money have been growing. The homage to the founder's grandfather, if I remember right, is the coffee. My recommendation is The Gray Man. Have you seen The Gray Man on Netflix?
No, but Ryan Gosling is very hot, so I may watch it just for
So,
him.
there's been this spree of really massive action movies on Netflix, which have at some point been a little flat because they've just been a lot of action and not
Hmm.
enough depth of some sort. This was a bit of a interesting change from that. I mean, the last one I enjoyed like this was the Adam Project, which had Bryan Reynolds on.
Yeah, great
Um,
movie.
and the same way here as well, this because it's the Russo brothers who did Avengers and also did the Winter Soldier before that. They have this knack of taking high piece action, but in between that, really building out character building moments. It's a
Hmm.
it's a I mean, it's a great movie. They've already sanctioned a sequel, and I can't wait to see the sequel as well. Good fun watch. Like it's a like I was not. I don't think I was. I didn't think boredom came into my mind, but it was just generally fun to watch. And like you said, Ryan Gosling's looking awesome. The entire cast looking awesome, and Dhanush is actually quite cool in the movie. He's got like some moments there. Like I was like, oh my
Go
god, like
Dhanush. Is he the
yeah,
Kolaveri guy?
yeah, yes, yes.
Oh
Thank you
my
for
God.
thank you
Kolaveri
for
say Ryan Gosling. Wow, what
you
a
know that
change in image. What a change in
Dhanush is
image.
bigger than most of the stars in the movie, by the way. Just you just want to know, Dhanush might just be bigger in
Yes, we
global
know the
standing.
South is ruling the roost. You know the South is ruling the roost when Mr. Karan Johar says no to nepotism and calls all of them on his couch and
You know, I have a
interviews
point of
them.
view on that. If you look at Coffee with Karan this season, it feels like the
Yeah.
most poised and refined and smart people on the show are all the South actors who are coming in. And all the Bollywood folks seem to be looking a little like almost like, oh my god, who are these guys? They're so cool. It's almost like that.
Okay.
It's I'm like, yeah, guys, the South is quite cool. We've
I'm
always
not
been
going to
cool.
make this. Yeah, of course. You came third in a singing competition, and the South is cool. That is our correlation in between one and the other. Lovely. And with that, what song
Yes.
did you sing, by the way? Why don't you close this episode out by singing us the song that you sang
I think
when
I
you
sang a
came
song called
number three
Vareva Emi
out of
Face,
four people?
if I remember right. But I think
Okay.
copyright issues will
Please,
come up if I sing
go.
this. So
Oh,
there are no
shit.
copyright issues. I will not sing. But it was a
Okay.
song called Vareva Emi Face. It is a Telugu song. From I forget the movie, but it's a Telugu song which I sang. I will leave it at that.
Lovely.
Guys can YouTube Vareva Emi Face, and then you'll that's just my voice singing it. I could have been a
Of
playback
course.
singer. Yes.
Sounds the same. You could have been so many things, but guess what you're
Yes.
doing on a Monday evening? You're recording a podcast with me.
And after this I'm
Uh,
gonna watch He Can See His Bum. But anyway, that's all.
oh my God.
Guys,
Dude,
please
we
watch
didn't discuss
Yashraj
Will
Mukhate's
Smith's.
remix. Yashraj
We didn't.
Mukhate's remix of
Oh, that was
I Can
great.
See
We
His
can
Bum.
see
It
his
is the
bum,
best thing on the
bum,
internet.
bum. It's so good. It's so
It's
good.
the
I love it.
best. Okay, before
Okay,
we spiral
bum
downwards,
friend.
we crossed 1 hour because of this randomness we have done. It's okay, jealous me. You can cut this out of the episode, but don't cut the fun stuff. Cut the boring stuff. But that's it for this week, guys. On Think Fast, we'll be back next week to give you more information with nonsense in between. That's our brand of podcasting.
That is true.
Toodles.
Bye.